Welcome to our session 2 of You're
Not
Crazy.
Crazy. Carrie Smith. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, as you met me before in episode 1. This is episode 2.
This is Jaspreet Rai, a licensed psychologist, and welcome back. So happy to have you here.
So today we're going to focus on anxiety. So many people in our world these days struggle with anxiety. So we wanted to share with you a little bit about what anxiety is. And we're going to talk about the cycle of the emotion of anxiety, how to learn to recognize it in a way to slow it down and help you out. You want to get started?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to start with triggers. What are triggers? So that could be a person, a place, a thing, even an emotion, right? So anything that really provokes that anxiety in us. And as we kind of dive into a little bit of the anxiety side, start with the initial trigger point.
Yeah, and just to add to that, triggers can be internal or they can be external. So sometimes I might be triggered by a memory or a thought or an experience, and then other times I might be triggered by a yellow car that goes by or something my parents did or something my kids did. So triggers can be a lot of different things. What happens to us is we have a trigger and then it triggers these thoughts, right? So we mistake our thoughts for feelings. We say things like, I feel like everybody hates me. I feel like the world is coming to an end. Those aren't feelings, those are thoughts. So we call these automatic thoughts. It's images in our head, anything that we think about. And notice if you say, I feel like, that's a thought. If you say, I feel, and there's one word, that's an emotion. So trigger is an automatic thought.
Absolutely. And to Carrie's point, also realizing that the floodgates open, we don't have control over that, right? So when we see a yellow car, let's kind of take that example, and it takes us back to childhood trauma or any anxiety like that. Our mind kind of already automatically goes there. We're not able to kind of pause that, but our goal is with awareness and with what we will be discussing, you'll be able to pinpoint some of that and kind of visualize this stop sign of, okay, let me just kind of stop in this moment right now. And the next part, like Carrie mentioned, is emotions. What is that emotion? What is that feeling that you're having after these emotions are coming up? So it might be that you're feeling fear, you might be feeling anxiety, you might be feeling guilt or shame. So those are also some of the things that we want to focus on as well.
I want to add to that too. There's a lot of different emotions that we might feel. I might feel sad, mad, happy, pissed off, excited, right? So this cycle can fit for a lot of different emotions. It's not just for anxiety, but for today we're going to focus on anxiety. And if you follow some of these steps that we talk about today to identify what you're feeling, you're more likely to be able to deal with it. So often, again, we get stuck in, I feel like the world hates me. I feel like everybody's mad at me. Those aren't feelings, those are thoughts. If I can separate my thoughts from my feelings, I'm going to be able to deal with, this is what I think, and it may not be true, right? And we'll get into that in our next episode. So what happens next in this cycle of emotion is that we attempt to avoid. We don't want to feel the emotions that feel icky. I don't want to feel mad. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel nervous. I don't want to feel scared. So we do anything and everything we can to avoid it. So we call these our behaviors. It's what you do, right? So I feel all these icky things. I have these automatic thoughts helping me feed this emotion. And so what do? I don't leave the house. I avoid talking to people that might be supports to me. I avoid talking to people I don't like. I avoid going to work. So we often do things, have behaviors that encourage us to avoid life. And we get to a point where our world gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
And what Carrie's talking about is more of that self-sabotage piece, right? Of that we're doing things because we think that something negative is going to happen, or we think so-and-so doesn't like me, or we think this negative outcome is going to happen. So we're trying to protect ourselves, right? That's what our mind is telling us. Hey, I'm going to protect myself by not engaging in this conversation or by not going to this event. But also the other flip side of that anxiety is that anxiety can also come about from positive experiences, right? So you might have an interview that you're looking forward to, and then this thought comes like, oh well, you're not going to do well, you're not going to you're not going to get the job. So all these things kind of come into our mind, and that also could be self-sabotaging. So it might be that we're avoiding because even though we're excited about this opportunity, but we're really not giving ourselves that chance because our mind is telling us, hey, you know what, you're not going to succeed.
And we call that a self-sabotage. So we don't mean to. We're not going to blame ourselves and say, oh, I sabotage everything. What we do instinctually sometimes is that we sabotage great opportunities. And so one of the things that we want to focus on is helping you learn how to first recognize this cycle and what we do kind of automatically so that we can do something different intentionally on purpose. And with that, it's developing a language to use to describe what this cycle looks like, right? So that self-sabotage, sometimes we do these things repetitively, compulsively, right? We've heard of OCD, that's obsessive compulsive disorder. That's where we do things because anxiety tells us I have to, and we do it over and over. So we feed the anxiety. We want to learn how to not do that. We want to learn how to say, you know what, anxiety, I hear you, I feel you. And maybe there's another story. What if the story was, I'm going to ace this interview and get the job? You're not going to feel anxious, right? And the reality is we want to have some anxiety because that encourages us to do well, to try, to put in effort, to protect ourselves. But we want to manage it in a way that we can still live life, go out and do things, have job interviews, hang out with friends, deal with difficult people, right?
And I think along those lines is it really helps us focus on realistic expectations, right? So we're not going from one extreme of I'm not going to get this job to, well, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to prep. I'm just going to go to the interview, right? So a little bit of anxiety really does help us kind of prepare for like, okay, this situation might come up. Okay, well, what's my plan for it? So that's where, like Carrie was saying, allowing us to pause and going back to that visual stop sign, right? Like, let me just stop. Let me just kind of take one thought at a time and let me create a realistic plan for it. What is in my control, right? That's the biggest thing we'll also talk about as this cycle is creating that awareness and allowing that control that you have over your thoughts instead of the thoughts controlling your next behavior, your next action. So that's really the goal here is looking at, okay, now that I have awareness, right, of I'm not trying to self-sabotage, but these thoughts are coming my way. The relief, the reward, what is the next step for me to be realistic and plan through? So I am aware of my anxious thoughts, but also my feelings, but how do I work towards making it to where I'm able to function with this anxiety, but not to the point that anxiety is controlling me?
Right. So there's two areas that we can stop, and we're going to talk more about. So you got to tune in next week for our next episode where we talk about learning how to manage our thoughts and learning how to manage our behaviors so that we can make some changes in our lives to help manage anxiety. So we also want to make sure that we add that our channel here is not a replacement for any kind of medical treatment that you need. If you feel like you're having a psychiatric or medical emergency, please call 911, go to your nearest emergency center. There's a suicide hotline, is it 988?
Yes.
That you can call anytime, not 911. That's if you're having a medical or psychiatric emergency, but 988 if you need support, if you feel like you're in crisis, please utilize a variety of crisis supports. Just if you feel like you need some additional support with therapy, we encourage you to seek out that professional support as well. We just want to be your friend, familiar face, somebody who looks maybe like you, like somebody you know that can understand and help you learn some tools to manage some of your mental health needs.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to add?
No, thank you for joining us today, and know that you're not
crazy.
crazy, but we'll see you next week.
All right.